Welcome, everyone. Again, if you are just joining us, please, if you could introduce yourself in the chat, let us know who you are, where you work, what you do, what country you're hailing from, any information you want us to know about you. Please drop that in the chat now while we give folks a chance to join us. Hi, Derek. I see a lot of familiar faces. Let me see this chat here real quick. Let me see who I'm seeing. Christine, hello. Clara, welcome. Long time no see. Adnane, Frank, Tamsin, Stephen, Lynette. Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad to see you guys here. Shaza, Kintar, Abdi, Rashid. Very welcome. So let's get started. We have a lot to cover today. And I think we have a really dynamic conversation and topic planned and a lot of opportunity for people to meet each other and visit and interact. So first of all, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to the Strategic Learning and Adaptive Management Peer Community Meeting. So for this meeting, like I said, there will be a lot of audience participation, and we really expect that to help us shape the content of the meeting so that it will be most relevant to you. So please be ready to participate and share any views you have on our topic, which we will discuss shortly. But before we start, we'd like to inform you that this session will be recorded and that we are providing interpretation in French. So please, I'd like to invite everyone to select their preferred language for the session. You can do so by clicking on the interpretation icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen and selecting either English or French. You can choose to mute the original audio or listen to it at a lower volume. We will have breakout rooms today, 3 English rooms and 1 French room. We may add an extra room depending on how many people join us today. And if you want to be in the French-speaking breakout room, please go ahead and message Meredith Brown in the chat now, and she'll make sure to get you set up for that French-speaking room. All right. So for those of you who are just joining us now, please go ahead and introduce yourselves. A lot of people have already introduced themselves, and we're really excited to see you guys here. I'd also like to introduce the facilitation team for the meeting. So let me start by introducing myself. I'm Jenny Haddle, the Senior Learning and Adaptive Management Specialist for IDEAL. I am with Save the Children and joined by Suzanne Amari, who's IDEAL's Activity Director. She'll be moderating the discussion with our speakers today. We also have Nicole Helm, Eric Frias, Meredith Brown, and Elisa Dickey to help us with the breakout rooms. All of them are from Acute Insight and work on IDEAL as well. If you have any technical issues during the meeting, please message Meredith, or also you can message Isabel in the chat. Since we are always having some new faces, and some of you may have heard this before, but I would still like to start with a brief introduction of the SLAM, what it is, and also IDEAL. The Strategic Learning and Adaptive Management Peer Community is hosted by IDEAL, which stands for the Implementer-Led Design, Evidence, Analysis, and Learning Activity. I know it's a mouthful, which is funded by USAID's Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance. BHA works to support the U.S. government's goal of improving food and nutrition security among the world's most vulnerable households and communities. IDEAL specifically addresses knowledge and capacity gaps expressed by the food and nutrition security implementing community, supporting them in design and implementation of more effective emergency and non-emergency food security activities. This community is specifically designed to bring together peers to share and discuss promising practices and issues around themes related to strategic learning and adaptive management. Our last meeting focused on busting barriers to reflection and learning in humanitarian context. And you can find all the recordings from our meetings at fsnnetwork.org under peer communities. So during today's session, we'll be exploring how to work with leadership to promote learning and adaptation. This is a real passion of mine. I am really interested in how leadership shapes the culture of an activity and an organization, and also how it either helps or hinders learning. And so today we'd really like to speak to some leaders who have been champions for learning, and start to understand a little bit better how we may be able to work with leadership to promote learning and adaptation. So the session will be interactive. We will start in breakout rooms. Can I get the next slide so we can look at the agenda together? Thank you. We'll start in breakout rooms to discuss some questions. And we'll also be looking at what some of the biggest obstacles are in getting buy-in from leadership. We're also going to give you an opportunity to identify the questions you may want to ask of Rita and Sagar, who I will introduce here shortly. Start thinking now. This is why we're calling it a chief of party hot seat. They are going to be on the hot seat, and you are the ones that are going to be providing the questions. So we're going to give you guys a chance to share with us the questions you think you would like to hear from Rita and Sagar. So let's go ahead to the next slide so we can introduce our speakers. There they are, Rita and Sagar. So both are worked in Uganda. So I'm not sure what that means, but apparently Uganda has a fantastic learning culture in general. Rita is the chief of party for the Graduating to Resilience activity implemented by AVSI. And Sagar is the former chief of party for the now closed Apalu Resilience Food Security activity implemented by Mercy Corps in the Karamoja region of Uganda. They're going to be really wonderful to hear from, and I'm really excited to hear the conversation today as well. Wealth of experience coming from both speakers, as well as our moderator, Suzanne, who has plenty of experience working on a learning activity. And I think she's also excited to interact with Rita and Sagar too. But before we hear from them, we want to hear from you. We have a word cloud activity set up for you in AHA Slides. So here's what you need to do. Use the QR code in your screen or follow the link that has been posted in the chat. We will give you a few seconds to sign in, and that way we can find out a little bit from you how you feel about leadership in terms of learning and adaptive management. Our question will be, what is one word you would use to describe an adaptive and learning-focused leader? So go ahead and get logged in. I see people joining. So far we have 13. I'll give you guys a few seconds, so we're not going to rush you. I'll give you guys some time to log in and answer the question, and then we'll see what words we come up with. Flexible, collaborative, curious. Broomby says organized. I see that in the chat there. Confident, open, agile, strategic, proactive, vulnerable. Ooh, I like that word. I like that one a lot. Wit, conscious. Curious seems to be leading now, along with collaborative. I see accommodative, organized. Ooh, lots coming in now. Visionary. Willingness, bold. I feel like we're gonna have to somehow like capture this and hang it up somewhere. Flexible. So right now it looks to me like curious and flexible, open, strategic are coming in at the top. Bold also has gained some lead. Wonderful. Okay, thank you guys so much for that. I think it would be really fantastic now for us to jump into our breakout rooms. it's really a chance to get to know each other better. So I encourage you, don't be shy. We are providing a safe space here. We really want to allow you to discuss with each other, and also to provide some feedback that will guide the panel discussion. We're going to be in breakout rooms for 20 minutes with facilitators who will also be taking notes. So you don't have to worry about any note taking, just speak freely. Once we get into the rooms, the facilitators will guide you. So if you end up in an English-speaking room and you would prefer to be in a French-speaking room, please send a message to Isabella and she will move you over. All right, is everybody ready to meet others? Yes, I can't see you. I can only see myself. So I know that you're saying yes, you would like to. So Bella, can we go ahead and open the rooms? And people can continue typing. We'll keep taking this information, and maybe at the end we can look at a screenshot of what the final product was.
All right, I think we're ready. We just had a few late joiners. I think we've got everyone in their rooms. All right.
All right, thank you.
Have fun, everyone.
Hi, everyone. I think we are slowly coming back from breakout. I know there are a few rooms that we're still going, but looks like we're almost all getting back. Jenny.
Well, I'm not ready to come back yet. I'm not gonna lie, guys. I was absolutely unprepared to come back to this space here, but that's okay. We will deal with it. We have one question that we've gotten for our panel. I want for the people that were in my group or other groups that haven't had a chance to share your question yet, or during the discussion did not have a chance to share your question, please put it in the chat because we will copy and paste that and start a list of questions and answer as many as possible. So what we're going to do now is just hear from each of the facilitators if there's any one or two themes that came up in your room. And I'll start out since I'm already unmuted, and just share one thing that came up was there are a lot of people here today. I can't believe how many people are here. And so it was really fantastic. Everybody, for the most part, came off mute and shared a little bit about themselves. We got a lot of really interesting words around leadership, adaptability, proactive. Some of the challenges that people mentioned were just a lack of follow through with learning and a lack of just not making the connections from learning to actually adaptation, which we've definitely heard many times before, and also an unsafe space. People say they want to learn, but then things look different because there's an innovative idea that was tried and there's criticism about it not being as expected. So those were some themes that came up in our group. I will pass it over to Nicole.
Great, thank you. Yes, we as well could have benefited for a little bit more time. So sorry to everyone in my group, but it was great to hear about all of your experiences and talk about what really makes a strong adaptive and learning leader for all of you. Great words, some that were surprising but really resonated. Accommodating, so accommodating, even to critics, and being open to learning, even from those who might have critiques. Technical also was one that stuck out. A couple people had, so really technical so that they can really grow with the team and engage in the substance creatively. And then several that we saw really come through in the word cloud quite strongly. So visionary, a strong communicator, really being central to it. Open-minded. So a lot of these great words that really resonated with me quite well. And we actually had a couple COP or former COPs in our group. So that's wonderful to know that we have in this group as well. So when we get to the discussion, it would be great to hear from you all as well, if you're comfortable. So that's it for us. And then we have a couple questions that we just put in the notes that can be looked at by by Suzanne.
Wonderful. Let's pass it over to Meredith.
Thank you. A lot of similar conversations. We really had several comments come up about confidence and comfort of the leader to be able to admit their mistakes, to be able to realize this is a learning situation or a period. So a lot of building that kind of safe environment to admit your mistakes or take the time to do the learning. And that also learning will get kind of forgotten or pushed aside when it just feels like success is happening and everything is running as it should. You kind of start to forget to do the learning and forget to pause and adapt and things. So I'm a leader that can remember to do that is really important and vital to the whole team. And then they hope, you know, all that comfort and confidence sort of trickles down to everyone else. Everyone else can feel safe to provide their thoughts. We did come up with some questions, some really good questions. So I'm excited. I've already dropped them in. But yeah, just a lot of kind of that safe space to be able to do that. And that recognizing that the leaders are mediating a little between the donor need and how the team is functioning. And also that it's important as a team to recognize that leaders are kind of straddling that line a little bit and to be supportive of that.
Thank you, Meredith. Eric.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So a lot of similar talking points on the positive side, jumping on the same train, just focused on the humble, like the humility required of a leader to be able to open to that. A lot of the conversation was on the obstacles and how even with a positive and learning and adaptive leader that such constraints like the organizational or donor bureaucracy, contract terms as well as length can influence the ability to adapt. So yeah, that's us in a nutshell. Thanks.
Thank you, Eric. And Elisa.
Merci, Jenny. Nous aussi, on a abordé des
Thank you,
thèmes
Jenny.
assez similaires.
We
On a
also
parlé,
talked about some
de
similar
l'importance
topics. We
d'avoir
talked
un
about how
esprit
important it
ouvert,
is to have an
parce
open
que,
mind.
parfois, l'apprentissage, ça fait peur,
Sometimes
ça peut
learning
sembler
can
une
scare
critique,
people.
et donc
People
l'importance
receive it
de
as a
créer un
criticism.
espace
So it's
où,
important to create
soit les
spaces
leaders, soit tout le
for
personnel
both
se sentent
leaders and
ouverts,
all team members
et aient un
to be
esprit,
open
d'ouverture,
and to keep
envers
an open mind
l'apprentissage. Et
towards
aussi,
learning.
on a parlé de l'importance de
We
la
also talked about how important it is, how
pouvoir,
important communication is,
justifier et,
especially
donner
when we
assez de
need
données
to
pour
justify
qu'on
and
puisse avoir des
provide data
conversations autour de
to
ce qu'il faut adapter, parce que parfois, si
have
on
good
a un
conversations
projet,
about
on a un
what we
plan,
need to
c'est difficile
adapt.
de,
If you
penser de changer,
when you
quand les
start out with
choses,
one plan,
vont
people are
vite aussi.
resistant to changing that plan.
Merci,
So you
je
need to be
tourne
well
la
prepared for
parole,
those discussions. So
à nouveau vers
thanks
Suzanne.
very much. Back over to you, Suzanne.
Thank you, Elisa. And if you didn't see in the chat, you know, when we came back from breakout rooms, you needed to reselect your interpretation. I quickly did that so I could hear everything that Elisa was sharing. I am very happy to have some great Chief of Party leaders joining in the discussion, and thank you so much for your discussion already and what you've already contributed. Like Jenny said at the beginning, my name is Suzanne Amari, and I am the Activity Director for IDEAL. And thanks to Rita and Sagar for joining me today in the hot seat. Rita is unable to join on video because of her connection, but we can go ahead and still spotlight her just so you can see her there. We've heard, as you reported out, you know, it's a challenge. It can be a challenge to get leaders to support learning and adaptation. Hi, Rita. But what we're going to try to do today is really identify ways that have been successful, how we've overcome those challenges that you raised in your discussions. And, you know, we really hope that you all can leave with ideas of how you promote a learning culture in your own activity, whether you're the chief of party or a data collection assistant. At any level of the award, you can be a learning champion. But I want to start with these two great learning champions that we have here and ask you what motivated you to become the strong adaptive management leader that you are. Sagar, let's start with you.
Thank you, everyone, for giving me this opportunity to be here. So, about becoming a strong adaptive management leader, I think that I'm still learning. So please excuse me if I am not, the leader that you see as an adaptive in the space of adaptive management. But one thing that actually, really motivated was me was, we know that we are living and working in a complex and challenging context. So if you look at, how population is increasing, there is less economic opportunities. And I know you have high inflation, migration, that actually is then giving to people, a lot of people are migrating from one place to another. Families are living away from one another. Then you look at also, the limited basic services. You have health, education, shelter. There is depleting food and water availability as a whole, as a system, it's depleting. And all of this is being affected by shocks and stresses, and that those shocks and stresses are reoccurring. So the place that we are living in is becoming more complex, and in order for addressing this, we as development or humanitarian workers, we need to be system thinkers, so that it allows us to understand, each subsystem, how one is interconnected with another one. We need to see how, we want to, for example, enhance food security, is to see how one and each is connected when it comes to access, availability, and utilization. But, we also have to understand that there is limitation within ourselves, right? So I am one individual and I may know so much about things of this system. I might be an engineer, I might be, a food scientist, I might be someone that works on livelihood, but do I understand all the connectiveness of how things work? And I think, that is the biggest gap we have in us, in our teams. And we actually, we might want to bring as much as we know. We want to do as much as we can, but we do not have the capacity to address that. So my motivation is, how can I give that opportunity to my team? How can I build that system at the very beginning, design that system so that my team understands of how they can come together, how they can learn together, how they can, provide their support so that we can achieve that impact. And that actually requires a leader to bring that enabling environment into the team. What are those internal systems, learning systems that we need to put in place in order for the team to learn as a whole, and then give it up? I think that was the main thing, and is still driving me, and motivating me to actually, to adaptive learning and management. So over to you.
Thanks, Sagar. Yeah, we have so much of the work that we're doing is addressing complex problems, and it often takes complex solutions to address complex problems, and you have to work together to come up with those solutions. So I love that systems thinking. Rita, what motivated you to become the strong adaptive management leader that you are?
Thanks, Suzanne. I hope you can hear me okay. Yes, okay. Perfect. So I would like to go with Sagar's idea. I think I'm growing every day. I don't think I'm that strong, but I'm liking the way you, the way it sounds. It sounds good. But I think that every day is really about being adaptive. I struggled to join this meeting for almost 15 minutes. I had to be adaptive in all kinds of ways. So without a doubt, every day that we live, we really need to be able to learn how to adapt. And to adapt really means that you need to learn on every single day. But I think maybe more specifically, I would speak to a few things. One of them is that I think about 10 years ago, I happened to walk into the ideal trainings for TOC. And I understood immediately that I could never go back from programming in that way. So if you work in a TOC style, everything you do, whether it's a 6 months project or 12 months project, there is just no way you will not learn, because every single building block on that theory of change has indicators. And it means you need to every time try to understand how much you're achieving, why are you not, and what are you going to do to adapt. And I think that the theory of change approach really helps with the learning bit. The second thing is that I happen to be a chief of party in the middle of a randomized control trial with IPA, many of you Innovation for Poverty Action. If you are working with Dean Carlin or Professor Lasse, on every single day, you need to explain more or less why exactly you're changing this from that in the middle of a randomized control trial. So it means you have to clearly explain what you're learning and you're having to change something. And so on every single day, I had to figure out ways in which as a team, we had to learn. I think the other one is that I just began my work as a social worker, but then eventually I ended up doing some measurement trainings. And I think having a measurement training as a manager or as a leader helps you to have an orientation that is different. You kind of think about the numbers, you think about the results, and then you question, and that helps you. That connects also to one of the mentors I had. I had a supervisor who I argued with most of the time. I had to explain why I was changing something. And so every time I found myself having to use data. And so the learning aspect sort of became something I was oriented to. I think lastly, I have a very keen interest in design. So many of the times I'm writing one thing or another, a proposal or that, or a program or a TOR or a standard operating procedure. And so every time you do a design, it means you're forced to think about what happened in the previous one, what's going to happen in the next one. So I can really have a program that's better. And I think lastly, connected to Sagar's point, there is so much that's going on and there is so little that is progressing and there is so much need. So every time with all these crises happening everywhere in the world, you need to figure out something that works. And so learning ordinarily means you're able to offer a solution that works, that can be sustained. And for a fact, every time you learn, it means you can provide evidence as to why something should be done in one way or another. I would say those are the things that really have motivated me to work around learning.
Thanks, Rita.
Back to you. Yeah.
I think, we saw in the word cloud, curious, being one of the key ones. I think humility, both of you really are great examples of those traits. We heard from the breakout group, from a couple of the breakout groups, that not feeling safe is something that's really an obstacle to learning. As a leader, how do you create a safe space for learning? And how do you deal with the fear of failure and the reputational risk of failure? Rita, maybe we'll start with you, this one.
Sure, happy to go first. I think if you, sorry, I'm going to keep on referring to the theory of change quite a bit, but it offers you a very structured way in which you're going to learn and reflect on everything you're learning as a team, right from the field staff up to senior management. So if you have a structured way in which you're going to have to learn, it means that you expect to have results and changes. And so everybody feels inclined to work towards understanding what's causing the change that we are seeing and what can we do about it. With a structure like that, it means everybody feels like they're contributing to this learning. And whatever decisions you come up with based on the learning, whether it's you didn't do so well or you did so well or you need to adapt or this activity just didn't work out, it's owned together as a team. I think if the more you involve almost everybody along the chain in your team in participating in one way or another in the learning, the more safe everybody feels. And also, whenever you have to make a decision that is based on what you have learned, that goes whether sideways or the right way, and people feel like they own the decision and it came from something that came from a learning together, it becomes even more safe. So I think primarily that space, once you have a space that allows everybody to feel like they can contribute, then you can create an environment of safety. So the learning is not about the M&E team or the learning team. It's about a coach who is in the field, who is finding out that this is not working because of this. And then it's about that coach telling me as a leader that, you know, if you don't change the number of people that I'm working with, I'm not going to succeed. And then about me doing something and they can report back that this is not working and something can happen about it. And I think the other safeties, I need to talk a bit about particularly BHA, because it's the recent activity I'm managing. I think BHA, Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance, provides a very flexible space. You almost feel safe as a leader because you know that you're going to be able to present something and they're going to listen because it's based on what you're learning. USAID generally is very keen about you having a CLA space that is approved, that is understood, that is supported, that is funded. And the more you come with all this information and explain it, the more they understand it. And I think once the staff and everybody in the team sees that there is an inclination to take the learning and use it, everybody feels quite safe around it.
Thanks, Rita. Sagar, how do you create a safe space for learning?
So one of the things that I don't know, to donors, maybe I'm not very good at, but maybe to my team I am. I really want to go to the field as much as possible and spend time with my team. And so that's where, you know, I go and meet as many team members as possible, so that, you know, so there is always, when I was a young, you know, worker, I was very scared of management, and I felt that, you know, if I go and if I interact with my team, and if I remove that fear away from my team, and if they understand me as, you know, any other ordinary guy who doesn't understand everything, and you know, and give that that environment to that team member, that you know, it's okay to not understand everything, it's okay to fail, you know. So creating that environment in the field, asking questions about what they understand about the model that we are implementing, and asking critical questions and telling them that this is something that I am learning from the team. I think, you know, if you are able to generate that environment with the team, and then again, you know, maybe I might not be able to get to, you know, 200 communities, but then if can I do that with my, you know, higher management, senior management team members that are responsible for managing these team members day to day, that can generate, you know, I would always like to say the vibe that is needed in the team to actually, you know, talk about learning and talk about, you know, it's okay to fail, and then, you know, learn from that process. So that's, I think, is how I would try to, you know, address this thing around, you know, fear and safe spaces, creating safe spaces.
Thanks, Sagar. I want to use learning vibe now instead of learning culture. I love that. So and part of that vibe, yeah, is I think that some of the very basic things that you're talking about, just getting to know your team does a huge amount to eliminate fear. You create trust. How do you eliminate fear? You create trust. And how do you create trust is getting to know people. If people know you, they're more likely to trust you. Yeah, if you're just some, you know, looming figure in a capital city or in a headquarters or things like that, then it's hard to build that trust. So thank you for that. I think, you know, both of you touched on some of the other issues that have been brought up, which include, I think, really just practicing what you preach. that the leader needs to be putting in place the learnings. So how do you not only collect all of this data and learn from it, but then how do you make sure that you have a system to put that learning into practice? Sagar, you look like you want to start us off with that.
No, I was trying to hear. So can you please repeat the last part? I just didn't get the last.
So just how do you, once we've created a system for, how do you not just create a system for collecting data and collecting learning? How do you then put that learning into practice?
So yes, so the first thing is, yeah, we need to have the system in place so that, we start collecting the evidences. The more important thing is then, as you said, most of the times we never take that, or the time is already lost, or we are in years 4 already. So what are we going to do? Because, because we were late in collecting information, or, doing all the reviews that needs to be done. So all of that, would come and disturb us. But I think, starting early is one thing. So what we should do is we need to have a learning agenda at the very beginning of a program. We should not wait for, someone like USA to say, is there a learning agenda? And then we start doing things. So that is one thing. But again, coming back to your point around how do we do, adaptive management? I think, again, bringing the team together, because they are the ones who actually said, this is the thing that we want to learn. And that's why the learning team actually helped them develop those, systems in place. Now they know whether they have improved or not. So it's already part of the process. It's already there. That is what is going to help them say whether they have been able to reach from one output to the another, looking at the results chain of whether you've been able to achieve that or not. And then, you would say, okay, in order for me to get there, I was not able to get there. There might be some reason why. So it's, that conversation, we're already one step ahead of how we need to improve the scenario by doing what. So I think, doing those interactive sessions within the team with at different stages of the programming, as well as, bringing the team with the, with the different stakeholders that we want to work with or are working with, so that they also understand, the learning. One thing that we very much miss is we do very good things around, us learning as a team. But the thing is, if we are talking about MSD programs, we are talking about, these programs where system actors need to do, that's where we miss. And so we do not bring them into this learning very early. And that's where, we miss the idea. So are they, in this system also, are they also learning, and are they also changing their strategies, and we are facilitating to change them, to allow them to change their strategies. So that's how I am doing it with the team.
Thanks, Sagar. That makes me think, Rita, of talking about sharing that learning beyond just your team and to also the other actors who are around. Rita, you've not only championed learning within the Graduating to Resilience activity, you've also been sharing what you've learned in that activity with the broader food security community. You've had a webinar series, you're doing a learning summit. So why do you think it was important for that learning that you had under Graduating to Resilience to reach beyond the activity team?
Maybe because I like posing around. No, no, not at all. I think the real motivation is that it goes back to the beginning, the question you asked us at the start, Suzanne. There's just too many needs, too little resources. There is just no way I can keep quiet when I have stumbled on something that works, which I think is going to be helpful for someone. The good news is that the AFC Foundation, where I work, has its 5 points. And one of the points is to use evidence to learn. And so we are really determined to learn. And so we take every opportunity to learn, but also offer the opportunity for others to learn. And I'm just thinking about last week, the question you just asked is a question that we got from almost 50 people. We had a marketplace event 2 weeks ago, and we had 300 people walk in and out for 3 days. And during the time, a number of people asked us, why the hell are you doing something like this, telling everybody about what you're doing, all the secrets? And we were saying, wow, and we were so busy talking about everything and giving everything out, because we thought this was our chance to really tell people what we've done well and what we've done badly. So they don't have to waste time. They just go and take what works and just scale it. I am sure that if you use this, and this approach, you're going to get this number of people out of poverty. So it's in my interest, it's in everybody's interest to receive what works and be able to scale it. And I think just connected also to the thing what Saga was just talking about around making sure learning is systemized, we wouldn't be able to do all that kind of thing if we weren't systematic in the way we were learning from the start. And I think that it's easy for you to do something like that, have a webinar, have a marketplace, share your results when you're organized and your systems for learning are in place and you actually are proud of what you're doing. I think it's easy to speak to people about what you're doing when you're really proud about the results. But also when you fail and you're able to adapt around the failure and still get something progressive out of it, you're very happy to share. So I think that's really the motivation for having all these events. We actually still have one coming up, and I am very excited usually about these kinds of opportunities. I was going crazy not being able to join here because I felt, well, it would be a real loss not to be able to listen to all of you and everybody's ideas, because I think it would be good for everybody to learn a bit more and see what they can adapt. Yeah.
Thanks, Rita. It would have been all of ours loss if you had not been able to join, but so glad you are, and I am excited to hear more of the learnings that are coming out of the Graduating to Resilience activity. Saga, you are now working on Mercy Corps' Sudan crisis response and recovery as well. So how do you champion learning in a humanitarian or protracted crisis environment? How do you balance the need for continuous learning and adaptation with a lot of pressure to deliver on both organizational goals as well as donor requirements in a shorter time frame?
Yeah, so thanks. So yeah, a humanitarian context is completely different to where you have been implementing a development program, and I've learned a lot as I've spent my past 2 months here. What I think have learned, I mean, but so even though they are different, but some of the things remain the same. You still need to have a learning agenda for a program. What are those learning agendas you need to identify, and who are the people that are going to help you, whether it's a research, whether it's internal learning, who are those team members that are going to help you do that. So again, coming back to are we budgeting the right amount for us to see, for us to have the team members who can help us, do the learning bit. Do we have team members enough? I mean, learning, again, I think that it's the responsibility of the program. It should not be, I don't feel that, there should be, like Rita was mentioning a little bit, it should, previously we used to think that, MEL is a responsibility of MEL. It should be taken out from there and should be part of the team members that are implementing the program. So is learning, also, have we staffed, enough people in our team so that, we get the right, right information so that it can help us help our learning agenda. The one thing that I feel is, because the context is changing, and I think there was one member who had to move because there was some context change in Sudan that happened, and she was not able to stay for the whole meeting. It can change, and it's very volatile. So, you need to be very flexible on what are the plans that you need to have in place. Plan A, plan B. Do we have enough systems in place to understand how the conflict might move from one area to another? And if that happens, do we have enough evidence to tell our donor that we might need to change a certain intervention, whether previously it was more of an a private sector led program. Now we might have to do it through a direct intervention by providing food or basic needs by ourselves. So is that something that we have in place as plan A, plan B? Do we have enough evidence to tell our donor the story, the right story? All of that has to be in place, and we need to budget for that. We need to plan for that. So I think that is something that I'm learning as I'm going through to see how we can address this in this situation here.
Thanks, Sagar. We had a question in the chat that asked about some of what you were touching on about budgeting, for staff that are dedicated, that are doing learning. I think you were talking a lot about just budgeting a project properly and being staffed up properly and making sure learning is part of everyone's responsibilities. But what about staffing that are also dedicated to learning? How do you motivate that? How do you justify that? And Rita, for you too, I know that you've had that dedicated learning components on your team. How do what do you think is challenging about budgeting and staffing those types of positions?
Maybe yeah, sure, I can go fast. I think the first thing is to get buy-in, really. Try to get buy-in as an organization or as a program from the most senior leadership. So even as a chief of party, I'm part of a foundation that has a country rep, like the senior leadership that I need to deal with. And one of the things, for example, I'll tell you we did a few years ago is to get our country representative to sit through a 5-day TOC, Theory of Change. And then he loved it so much that he literally made every other program do it. And so in his orientation and the orientation of senior management team, everybody knows this is how you're supposed to work. And so there's going to be, every time you're doing any design, a real interest to plan and budget for learning people, for learning teams. But I think more than that, and I think it's also connected to take learning away from the learning person and let everybody's job kind of rotate around learning. It means that you need to find collaborative tools. You could have a learning lead, somebody who will help you with your research and learning. You need some technicalities, but you need to find a way in which everyone in the team has a way in which they contribution in one way or another. I'll give you a simple example, a context tracking tool. If a context tracking tool is a tool that all of you will fill in, and there is no way a single learning person will be able in a refugee settlement to put in all the data and what is changing single-handedly, because we all go to tens of meetings every day in different directions, but we need to keep on updating this context tracker about what's changing. So we all feel compelled to add to this, because in the end, this is the only way we can tell if our assumptions are holding, if the risks are there, if the opportunities are there. It's the only way we can tell who to connect to if we fill this context tracker. There are many other like collaborative tools that you could find ways of using. But I think the more systematic you are, there are of course also opportunities. There are donors that are very keen about learning. They will even be generous enough to give you some 6 months to adapt. So you're oriented already knowing that I'm starting with a 6 months period to think about what I'm doing. Once I do it, I am learning systematically. I have another 6 months in between to wiggle room to figure out how I'm going to use what. So you have this motivation. Look out for those kinds of fundings, because I think those are very helpful. They give you a chance to budget out directly, and they're usually very generous. but find ways in which you can really get senior management in, get their buy-in, and also find ways in which you can spread the learning to a number of staff beyond just one team member or 2 or 3 team members.
Thanks, Rita. Sagar?
Yeah, I think Rita has touched upon most of the points. If there are generous donors, have that conversation at the very beginning. I think the initial phase is very important when we are actually designing our mail plan, and I think that's where we have to, and it's if a mail plan is agreed by the donor, then staffing and budgeting would not be as much of a problem. But if we realize again in the middle of the program that, oh, we need to do learning, and then we want to, then I've also had experiences where donor have said no because we do not have enough time to actually learn from staff, hire the staff, and then develop the systems, and then learn internal systems, and then learn from this process. So I've also heard no, a strong no. So so I think starting early is very important. Donors, for those donors that are not as flexible, then again building the capacity within the team, and hiring enough staff so that they can do that by themselves. Again, having said that, I'm not saying that I want to take team members from CLA out of and then put it in programs. What I'm suggesting, there needs, as Rita said, there needs to be those people that are good at developing tools, training the team on how to do how to learning and adaptive management. They have to be there, but then we do it in a balanced way so that this is done properly for those donors that do not have a lot of flexibility.
Thanks so much for that, Sagar. Frank, you were the one who asked that question that we just had, and I see that you have your hand up. So I'm going to go ahead and invite you to come off of mute, and if you want to add anything or clarify your question, please do.
Sure. Thanks, Sagar. Good to see you again. That was part of the Massive team a few years back. So just to add on to what you said towards the end of your feedback, Sagar, and as somebody who's been trying to do this a lot as a male advisor, I really want to emphasize for the leaders on the call that for you to get that culture, the tools, the processes that will enable your team or organization to develop a culture of learning, you need somebody who understands learning from the get-go. And so it has to be planned for. It doesn't have to be a senior position. A learning officer is sufficient enough to get learning integrated into the whole mail system and the program implementation cycle. Because once the program team gets into the rhythm of implementation, it's very hard to pause and reflect without somebody guiding and leading this process. So the team in the field, our partners, they have all the knowledge. They know what the outcomes are, what challenges they're facing, but we need somebody to package this, disseminate it, and confront or present to leadership at the right time, because data evidence and lessons learned are only as useful as if they're used in a timely manner. So I'm a huge advocate for budgeting for these positions as early as possible. You can grow and convince the organization or the donor with evidence as the program goes on, but as an organization, there's something you can do, or as a program, you can even start at the lowest point possible to make sure that learning is prioritized, and from there you can build and grow as much as possible. I want to make a huge shout out to Florence, who's in a learning position right now, which is something that Masik has done very well. And I think it's an example that other organizations should emulate, including mine, where I am right now, to prioritize and to fund learning as a core component of program implementation. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. And I think anyone who has come across Florence and her work, she definitely has great learning vibes. So I have one more question that I am going to ask that came from the chat, and then we'll have a closing question. But thank you both. Thank you to everyone who's entered into the chat, your questions, your thoughts. Please continue to do so. So what strategies are you using for learning into the future? So you're working in dynamic and complex environments where uncertainty is high, and maybe what has been done in the past is not especially helpful. The team needs to be able to innovate and come up with solutions as the context evolves. So how is that learning done, and how do you motivate and respond to it? Sagar, you want to start?
Sure. I think, strategies, I would not name one strategy. I think, some of the things that have come out in the cloud exercise that you did, Suzanne and team. I know, like, what do we need to be? We need to be, open. We need to be, interactive to team members. We need to try to listen to what is coming out from the field. We need to be very much communicative to our donors, so that we explain what's coming out from the field, because donors are our partners. They want everything good for the program, so they would not hinder our processes. So how are we communicating that? And then all the different things that came out from that word cloud. I think if we are able to form it as strategies, I think that's what is going to help us for learning in the future. There is not a silver bullet here, that can solve. It's very contextual, depending upon what is the type of program, what is the type of donor, what is the time that we have. There's so much of things that we need to consider. But then even after all of that, what we need to know, what we need to take by heart is learning is in the middle of everything. If we are not going to do that, then we have not succeeded. We have been a failure. Maybe we have reached maybe 10,000 people or 100,000 people through this program. But if we are not learning anything, and if we're not changing, as Rita was saying, if we're not changing the the particular model in any way, if it is working or not working, if it is working, then if we're not scaling it up, then there is no use of implementing these programs. So I would envision it like that way, and be very open, think out of the box, and be open is what I would say.
Thanks, Sagar. Rita.
Yeah, I think for the future, difficult context, you're in a hurry, I think we need to invest in digital. Make learning really simple. Visualize your learning. Make sure everybody understands it. Make sure you can learn as quickly as possible, cheaply. I think the future needs us to be more versatile, and we can't. And yes, you can't. It's true that many times when you're in a structured program, in a development space or semi-development, you have the liberty to design your learning plan, work with it, even smile along the way. But then, in the past, I think what used to happen is we were more ad hoc. Every opportunity, you were just learning and doing something about it. It wasn't systematic, but I think we were finding opportunities. I see the future as something like that, that's more complex, where you need to take every little shot that you can to learn as much as you can. And I think some of the things we talked about earlier around having more people involved, having more people involved means you can get a lot more in quickly. Thinking about learning as a way that helps you to improve, thinking about learning for cost effectiveness. I think that's the trend in the future, because everybody wants to try to spend as little as possible, but get the best quality. So I think with that mindset, if we think that way, we might be better prepared for the future.
Thanks, Rita. And a potential topic for a future SLAM meeting, digital tools for
Sure.
learning. Absolutely. I think it's definitely something we could all benefit from. And you're right, that is very much the future. We have one last question for our panelists, but it is also for you, our audience. So we want to ask, thinking of your, younger self and any misconceptions of learning and adaptive management you may have had, what advice would you give yourself now? So I'll go to Rita first and then Sagar, but please, everyone who's participating, what advice do you have? We'd love to hear from you. Please put that in the chat.
So the thing is, if I could go back to my younger self, I would really like that. Have a few more years backwards. But well, I'm going in the future, so I just have to move on, I guess. But I think my younger self is not too different from who I have become today in terms of my orientation, my thought, my appreciation for learning. And I think also my future self will have the same orientation. What I would just say is, if you're starting out for learning, do take a measurement course, a learning course, do M&E, do anything basic. It's going to help you have a certain appreciation for learning and an appetite that will keep you going. The other thing is that don't think learning is that expensive and complex. When somebody says collaborate, learn, and adapt, then these are 3 big words and you're so scared. But in reality, every time you fold your clothes in a bad way and then they are wrinkled, the next morning you figure out how to fold them nicely. And every day is a learning opportunity. So my younger self needs to know, and I think many of our younger selves need to know, that learning is happening every day. The more systematic you become, the better. The more you use techniques and technologies or technicalities, the more they appreciate your learning, versus if you did it very informally and in your own style. So I think those are the few tips I would kind of give, but just to say that we are all contributing towards this big learning space. Thanks.
Thanks, Rita. And a reminder to please put your advice into the chat. What would you say to your younger self or younger colleague to motivate them to be a learning champion? Sagar.
Yeah, myself, I would be, I would be more critically thinking person about whatever I do, whatever I would work on, and just ask the question of why is this happening, why isn't that happening, and have that conversation with your, with your colleagues that are, because you know the best. And your colleagues would be able to ask more questions or provide you, responses, and you will get a solution there. We don't have, so there are so many solutions that can be identified and can be implemented then and there. We should not be waiting for what would my supervisor say, what would my managers say. If you are able to find it there, do it and show the results, and show how we were doing and how we did it by doing it adaptively. I think that we don't have to, as Rita said, it's not very expensive. So yeah, if that can be there, it would be, I would be a better me, I think, as I grow up. But I would also want to hear from others, what others think.
Yeah, we're getting some.
What about you, Suzanne? What about
we're getting
you?
some great responses here. And I think for me, it would be, don't assume that something that you've observed has been observed or learned by everyone else. So I think sometimes when you are new in your career, younger, and you see something, you're like, well, someone else will make that change or point that out, that that's an issue or a challenge, or even something that's working really well that we need to make sure that we continue to do. And so really speaking up. And I think a few people have said, just don't be afraid to speak up. And point out what you're learning and what you're seeing. So we have some great responses. Be more curious, challenge the status quo. Be part of the change. So thank you for these great motivations. Always ask why. I want to thank you both for being in the hot seat today. Not just kind of warm, maybe not too hot. I really appreciate everyone who was in conversation earlier, who's contributed in the chat, and I hope we are able to take some of the things that we discussed today and apply them in your own work. And with that, I will hand it over to Nicole.
Thank you. Thank you. I love these learning vibes, and I'm going to take them with me all day. So this has been wonderful, and I've learned a lot. Just a quick shout out. So a quick win for AM that many leaders can endorse. Ideal has revamped our Introduction to Scenario Planning course, which is available online for free on Kaya. So the course will only take 1 to 2 hours to complete. It's completely asynchronous, so you can do it in your own time. And really, I had a couple points here on examples of what we've done with Ideal, but really, we did it for the regional knowledge sharing meeting last year. And this year we're doing it again, and Suzanne is taking charge of it. So really an example of sort of, learning coming together with leadership, and leadership taking ownership of a simple exercise that really made everyone feel more comfortable going into an important event that many things could have gone wrong with. It was a regional event. And it just made everyone feel more confident, knowing that we were aware of some of the challenges or some of the positives that could happen, and we had a plan for it. And so that was really helpful, and we'll do it again this year. And so it's a really, for a lot of the different scenarios, things we were talking about today in the context where we're working, it's a really useful tool, and the course is pretty simple and straightforward, and can be used in all different contexts. So shout out there for that course, which is now live on Kaya, and you can also access it through the FSN network. So as we close, please take some time to fill out the evaluation that Elisa is posting in the chat. We're going to use that feedback to improve these meetings, and consider the topic and design of upcoming meetings. So we practice what we preach. Jenny will be sending out a follow-up email in the next few days with links to resources that will be helpful for applying some of the approaches we shared in today's call. Also, if there were any questions that were not answered, we'll be sure to get those answered and share in that follow-up email as well. Stay tuned for more information, and please join our listserv. So that's the SLAM listserv, to receive the direct invite and helpful learning and adaptive management focused content. And Elisa is pasting the link to the SLAM peer community page, where you can find that link and join the listserv. But thank you all again. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you to Suzanne. Thank you to all of these participants. I mean, it was a wonderful conversation, and I learned a lot. So thank you all. And with that, we'll close.